Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Meepleville Meets. Today, we have one of the most popular hosts, reviewers, personalities, whatever you want to call it, in board gaming today. We're very fortunate to have from the Dice Tower. Please welcome Zee Garcia. Hello, Zee.
How's it going, Tim, my friend? Hello, everybody.
Doing good today. Thank you so much for joining me today. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you for asking me.
Yeah, so first of all, in case people don't know who are watching this, just do me a favor and go ahead and tell them who you are and what you do for a living and how they may know you.
Yeah, so my name is Zee Garcia, and I'm one of the employees at the Dice Tower, which is a review channel. We put out all sorts of content related to tabletop gaming, board games, card games, typically. And I am, as Tim said, one of the reviewers there. So I'll put out my own reviews of new board games. I will join in series that we do, different series, such as the top 10 line of videos we do. We do reviews that encompass several of us giving our opinions on something. So that's basically what I do there. And that's what the channel is all about, bringing people into the hobby, informing them so that they can make the best choices as to what they want to play, who they, what kind of game they want to play with their family and friends, who they want to play with, new people they can play with, all of that good stuff.
Fantastic. So one of the things that I'm not quite sure I know the whole story, and maybe a lot of other people don't, how exactly, because from what I hear, and correct me if I'm wrong, you were Tom's quote-unquote first hire, correct? Like the first employee of the Dice Tower?
Yeah, that's right. You don't need the quotes, actually. I was definitely the first hire.
So how did that all come about? Like, how did you meet and all that stuff?
So it's a fairly straightforward story. Tom was living in Korea before he moved back to the States. He lived over there for several years. And he was I believe, a pastor and a teacher over there. And so he moved back to the States. He was figuring out where to move. And he ended up, near where I am now, where we are. And that's Homestead, Florida. And he joined the local game group, as you would if you're a gamer and looking for, some folks to play games with. I was part of that group already, so we met there. Just rubbed shoulders at game night for a few months, and he thought I was funny. He liked, hanging out with me, and so eventually asked me if I wanted to jump in on a couple of videos with him, which I said, sure, I'll be happy to do it. And I did that. I did a couple of little things, and eventually did top 10s with him and with Sam Healy. I did that for over a year, I think, before he actually said, hey, he felt big enough, was able to hire someone, and then brought me on. Yeah.
Okay, so if you were part of the gaming group and it took about a year and all that kind of stuff, what were you doing before? What was your occupation?
So before that, I have a degree in a fine arts degree for theater. That's what I went to school for.
Okay.
So I did some acting with that, but fairly quickly turned to teaching with that degree. So I was teaching high school theater. I ran a magnet program for theater and then taught a couple of different places. And so that was the previous thing I had done till he wanted me to do that. And the thing about theater, especially high school, teaching theater, is that, as folks may know, if the budget at a school takes a dip and the budget across the board takes a dip, the first thing that they are going to cut is going to be that theater teacher, the arts teacher. They are the first ones out of the door. So while I like that lifestyle of being a teacher a little more than I like the lifestyle of being an actor, a working actor, that's a very unstable lifestyle, right? You never know where your next gig is coming from, when it's coming. It's still not as, it still had its ups and downs. And so there was a down. I saw an opportunity, and Tom, wanted me to come on. So I thought, hey, let's give this a try. I'll give it a shot.
All right. So let me just ask you then, were you about to be made redundant, fired, or cut, or did you actually leave to join the Dice Tower?
I was between like a certification and needing another one, basically.
Okay.
So I would have had to pursue it again, and I decided not to and pursue the Dice Tower job. Yeah.
Okay. And so how long has it been now that you've been with the Dice Tower in total? When did that happen? The start?
I'm super terrible with dates, I'll be honest. I think it's been about 5 years.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that sounds right. I think it's 5 or 6 years, something like that, that I've been an employee.
Oh, very good. All right. So another thing that I've heard, and I find it fascinating. I just want to find out the whole story about it. But you actually, because I used to live in, just to let you know, I lived in South Florida in Pembroke Pines, Broward County, and I was an air traffic controller. So we used to give flight following to the Hermanos al Rescate out in the Gulf, looking for people. And you actually came over from Cuba that way on a raft or a boat. Is that true?
That's right. Yeah, I came over on a raft. It's a little more complicated than that. I left. I should say I left Cuba on a raft, but I arrived in this country in a plane, which is an interesting proposition, right? And between the night of taking to the ocean and the day of landing on the tarmac, it was about 9.5 months. So that's interesting. Here's the whole story. Here's how that plays out. That weird.
Okay, yeah, that is
story.
all right.
So yes, I was on a raft. I got picked up by Coast Guard, U.S. Coast Guard, got sent back to Guantanamo Bay, the military base at Guantanamo Bay. This was in the mid-90s when Castro, the government, the Cuban government, basically said, "You know what? I'm not even going to stop anybody leaving. Go if you want to take it to the water in an invaded, two. Not going to stop you. Nor the government would stop you, throw you in jail." And so a lot of people did. And, I was one of those people with my family. I was, 9 years old at the time, but we did that and then got picked up, like I said, by the U.S. Coast Guard. And they sent all those people back to Guantanamo Bay. There were about 33,000 people there, Cubans, picked up at, in the between the Florida Keys and Cuba and sent back. And we're just stuck there in concentration camps while litigation was dealt with, and eventually some people did not get sent to the U.S., and the majority, I would say, did eventually.
All right, so let me ask you, so if you were 9 years old when this first happened, I'd like to just talk a little bit about life in Cuba, because if you don't mind me asking, how old are you now?
I'm 37, I think.
37. Okay, so just under 30 years ago. Do you remember growing up or have vivid memories of a boy in Cuba?
Pretty good memories of a boy in Cuba. Yeah, again, my memory is just sort of generally across the board pretty terrible. But I was certainly old enough where I speak Spanish and I remember Cuba and I remember, yeah, sure, what life was like there. Absolutely.
Okay, because what I'd like to know is, because again, even no matter where you are, at what age are we really aware of politics, government, society, and all that kind of stuff? So if you could a little bit, do you have fond memories? Was it nice living there? Was it great? Like what are your memories of a young child in Cuba?
A bit of both, and part of that is because I was sort of a sickly child. I had asthma as a child, have asthma as an adult as well, though it's much more in control. But yeah, so the good memories stem from now as an adult, sort of looking back, going, hey, when I was sick and had asthma and had to go to the hospital, I didn't have to pay for that. I could just go to the hospital. Now that they have everything they needed to treat me with, maybe, possibly. And being out in the street, playing with friends, that sort of thing. Yes, I have those fond memories. Also, though, even as a kid, that you need to be careful what you say out in public, and that you don't speak ill of the government. and that so and so on your street is what we call over there chivato, which means someone who is going to give you up to the government if they know what your dad does to be able to put food on the table, because the government only gives you about a pound of rice for the family for the month. And they jot it down in a little notebook when you go to the store. And that's what you get for the month. And nobody can subsist on that. And so you find ways around it, right? So yes, absolutely. I was aware of all of that.
Okay, so let me ask you then, did you, and again, I don't know how worldly you were. I don't know what you learned in school, how much access you had to television or all that kind of stuff to know about much of the other world. So do you remember thinking that this is just how everybody lives, or did you know inherently or specifically that you were living under an oppressive government?
I think most people over there know that. You also have to be aware that Florida from Cuba is not that far. And a lot of people do have family that has already immigrated, or they know someone who has family that has immigrated. So you are aware of what's out there. Now, from TV, no, you're not going to get it from TV. It's two channels. They have two channels in Cuba, channel 2, channel 6. On one of them, it's normally politics. I would say it's 60% of the time it is Castro giving a speech, or was. On the other one was the regular programming, which would still be news at, I think, 6 p.m. and 1 at night. And the rest of the time, whatever the programming was. But as a kid, I was watching, Russian cartoons. That's what I grew up watching. So no, there's not a lot of sort of worldly information. We're not getting MSNBC. And then, other than that, I mean, you as a child, you sort of get it through your parents, like anything else you pick up as a kid, right? And I assume, depending on what kind of parents someone had, would color their worldview. But my parents certainly were not communists, and they understood that the government there was terrible and oppressive and starving its people, and so on. And so did I.
Right. So did you have the luxury of having, say, Cuban idols or heroes? Because as a young boy in America, back when the Olympics were like a big deal, you know what I mean? Like a huge deal. I remember Teofilo Stevenson, right, was the greatest heavyweight boxer in Olympic history, whatever, all that kind of stuff. So are you aware of him, or did you have like Cuban role models or idols?
There were a few sort of, sports in Cuba were certainly a thing. Like, we were a well-known country for being, for excelling in baseball, for example. And so that was certainly a thing. And we had very good judo, stars. But I wasn't necessarily into sports then or now, really. So there was that. And then other than that, figures. But it is an oppressive government. I mean, your idol should be Castro. You know what I mean? I mean, that was the idea. That's the agenda they were selling. Was you want an idol? It's Castro. It's Fidel Castro. That's your idol. Or Cuban figures from history, right? Che Guevara, stuff like that. But yes, we had sports that was available. There were Cuban actors who you could, watching in things. So sure, there was some of that.
Okay. So now I'd like to, I don't know how much you remember, but were you involved in the discussion, in the plannings or whatever of your family perhaps leaving the country? Or how did that come about as far as you can remember?
It was always in the conversation, in a very hush conversation, I should say, right? Like, hey, so and so is thinking about building a raft, and they've a place to hide it while it's being built, and they're gonna go to this little town where this guy says he's got corrugated steel, and we're gonna go see if we can pick that up. We're gonna trade him a cow for that. Obviously, we have to steal the cow from somewhere. Because because everything belongs to the government. So yes, I was aware of all of this. I mean, obviously in like the little hushed whispers that a 9-year-old would be allowed to hear. I'd like to think a trusted 9-year-old, but you get my meaning. Now, when it was time to go, when the government, like I said, you know what, forget it, you can go. Let the U.S. deal with you. And the Cubans that took up the government on that said, okay. And many of them said, oh, okay, we've actually been building a raft already. Like my father and friends of his. So the most vivid memory I have regarding all of that was the night or the day before they had decided to go. I was very sick. I forget what it was, but I was very ill. And my father basically sat down with me and asked me, makes me emotional actually. Do you want to go? Or do you want to not go? But, this was a big thing. This was a very, this was not something to say no to lightly. So I said, yes, no, we'll go, because I knew the attempts had been happening to get out of the country for my father one way or another since the 80s, since, for many years, for many decades. So, or a decade and a half at that point.
Right now, first of all, Zee, I just want to make sure this is okay talking to you about this, right? I don't want to bring up.
Sure, yeah.
Okay.
I mean, it's fine. Like I said, if I'll let you know if it's something I don't want to talk about. It's fine. It's been a long time. It's just
okay. I just want to make sure.
Absolutely, it is very. I think to some people it might sound dramatic, me talking about this, and they're like, "Wow, how dramatic!" Like these broad strokes are very dramatic, but it's also real, and this did happen. And, it's, I think it's hard to picture something like it when you haven't experienced anything of that magnitude before, and I'll give you an example. I saw someone on Twitter or somewhere some time ago, I don't recall exactly when, who mentioned something along the lines of, wow, this one thing is so terrible. It's like being in a concentration camp.
Yeah.
And I thought to myself, no, it's not. You've not been in a concentration camp. I've been in a concentration camp. These things get thrown around.
They do. Yes, they do.
But I remember that very vividly, and I remember being at sea very vividly and feeling sick and throwing up and being, in the water for 3 days before we got picked up.
Wow, was it? Okay. So, wow, that's a long time. Were you like how many people went with you on the raft or the boat that you were on?
I want to say it was about 26.
Oh, wow. So it was a good size thing.
Yeah, it was, we were definitely crammed in there, but it was a large raft made of 55-gallon drums welded together, 4 on each side, kind of like a catamaran.
Right. Now, was this wasn't part of the Mariel boat lift, was it?
No, that was in the 80s.
That was in the 80s. Okay. So, but this was another wave of when Castro just freely allowed people to leave, as you were saying.
Sure. Yeah, the Mariel thing was a different thing where he was sending, a deal sort of was formed to allow Cubans to come to the U.S., and then Castro used that opportunity to empty his jails.
Right. Yes.
In many ways. And I don't want to say everybody who came during the Mariel was like a criminal, but that's why Castro did it.
Right. So now all the 26 people on that boat or raft with you, were they all family, like part of your village, neighborhood, community, whatever? Who were those other people?
My parents and my sister, who's older than me by about 6 years, and myself, and the rest of them friends, people I don't keep in touch with now. You know what I mean? No, it's just people.
Yeah. Okay. So now, once you got to say America after you spent time in Guantanamo Bay, because I'm sure that was absolutely horrible, and I'm sorry you had to go through that. How long did it take you, as still a young adolescent, to realize that your life was now going to be completely different and essentially better? Do you remember if there was like a moment or how was adjusting to life as now becoming an American or living in America for you?
It's interesting, I think I have two answers to that. The first one is the very obvious one. It took a day. The first day I got here, we landed actually in an air base that's near here in Homestead. My paternal aunt, lived in this country already, and so we got picked up, right? And I remember it must have been the day of, maybe the next day, I don't know. She took me to a Burger King, I think it was. And my little Cuban mind was blown away. I mean, it was a place where you could go and buy food. And then she told me, what kind of soda do you want from the soda machine? And I didn't know what to say. I don't know. I have no idea. It's all foreign to me. So that very first day, the idea of like, oh, wait, they have food. You can just eat the food. Great. Wow. The other answer is, I don't know. Never. You know what I mean? Not yet. That's the other answer. It's because you always carry that with you. That's the thing, and it's
right.
People always say, like, if you want perspective on things, travel, and it's simply the truth. You have to be aware of more than your immediate surroundings.
Right. So that's an interesting point. That's a good segue into sort of my next question, because knowing South Florida as I do, because I lived there for maybe 15 years or whatever, and I had really good friends who were Cuban who had been in America for 30 years and still didn't speak a word of English. So did you, and I don't want to say it's a bad thing, get caught up in that situation where you sort of leave Cuba and Cuban culture, you come to America and you just kind of stay in Cuban culture? Were you either determined to become quote unquote Americanized? Was your family? How did that process sort of develop with you and your family?
I think it's an age thing. For most people, I want to say, I think, and also who you're around, right? I mean, if I go to France now, but I'm there alone, I will pick up French and I will have to incorporate myself into that society at least somewhat. But, most people don't travel like that in a bubble. Certainly, most Cubans who came to the country, to the state, didn't. But I was, 10 years old, right? I had a birthday in Guantanamo. So I was 10 years old or 11 years old. I forget if it was, 9 or 10 or 11. And I started middle school, was the first grade I started in this country. And I started in, secondary English as a secondary language, and which was extremely difficult. I remember just coming home from school weeping because it was so difficult to, like, feeling like such a foreign body, in a different place and culture, and not being able to understand anything that's going on around you, and struggling, and having those classes taught to you by someone who is speaking English and Spanish. So, okay, I can pick that up. But then going to a math class at which I excelled and not being able to understand what was expected of me because I couldn't understand what they were saying. So that was certainly difficult. But I did pick it up quickly. I moved. It's 5 levels of what they called ESOL back then. I don't know what they call it now. But anyway, language, secondary language, English. So it's 5 levels, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And I did it very quickly. I started with 1, obviously, and they moved me through the levels during that first year. And I took a test at the end of the year to go from 4 to 5, which I passed. So I took 1, and then I took 5 the next year. And normally it's supposed to be a yearly course. So I picked it up fairly quickly. Pronunciation got a little bit better when I did theater school in high school and then college. Yeah.
Okay, so let me ask you, I'm really intrigued by, especially somebody coming from Cuba, and knowing, again, how the life is in South Florida. They got Little Havana, or, there's a really, really big Cuban culture, whereas I said you could literally be in parts of, and people who've never been down there don't know, but you will agree with me, you can be in parts of Miami where nobody speaks English, no signs are in English, nothing. You wouldn't even know you're in America, right? So is it like, how did your other family, or perhaps even maybe tell me maybe about some friends or other people, because again, I knew them, where you do have to sort of make a conscious decision to become quote unquote sort of Americanized, or American, however you want to say it, step out of your comfort zone, or you can still stay within the Cuban culture. Do you know what I mean? Like making that decision. Has your family done that? You done it? Do you know people who are back and forth?
Right. Well, I've done it. I've certainly done it. My family has not really done it, right? So like my sister is about 6 years older than I am, and she speaks English okay, but she did not pick it up like I did. She didn't go to school the way I did, right? And then my parents, not at all. My father a little bit more than my mother, but they haven't really picked it up. I would not call either one of them an English speaker or someone who is Americanized. My sister, neither for that matter, but she does speak it a little bit more.
So are your parents, like, you see your parents, they're down there in South Florida, and your sister like, okay, so obviously when you go home, then you speak Spanish in the house?
Oh, sure. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so that's another thing I'd like to discuss a little bit then. What's it like? Like, do you consider yourself, and again, this is just a question for maybe a lot of people who are part of two different cultures, comes to where, because there's a difference for the way I look at it, right? I have plenty of friends who say they're Irish American, Italian American, but that was like their great grandparents or something. They've never been there, don't know nothing about it. You truly are a Cuban American, but right? But
I mean, I'm a Cuban citizen. I was a Cuban citizen, and I was naturalized as an American citizen. So yeah,
right. But what I mean, Zee, specifically about that is like people who I'm saying like are Irish American, whatever. They don't like have an Irish brogue. They don't eat Irish food. But you still can sort of be part, or when you go home, you have that Cuban culture.
Sure.
But is it something you like still want to be a part of, or you sort of left it behind moving towards American? How does that work with you personally?
I think anything that you again, I'm of the mind that the more, for lack of a better term, culture you have, or the more different sort of spheres you have access to that enrich you and who you are and how you can look at a situation and assess that situation from different points of view, then the better of a person you are, I would assume, so.
Oh, I would agree with that 100%. Yeah.
I think that that's invaluable. And I wish more people in the world could do that, especially in America, honestly, because it's such a large country. It's separated from just about everything else, right? It's not Europe. You cannot go, float around Spain for a while, in Brazil, and pick up things. Just sort of become a little more worldly, not in the snooty way, in the I can look at the situation and understand what that person is seeing in it, that way. So no, I'm thankful for it. Absolutely.
Yes. And then you did mention that you became naturalized. So you are an American citizen?
Yeah.
And what about, like, say, your parents?
They are as well. Yeah. This is funny, but my mother just became an American citizen not 3 months ago.
Oh, wow. Well, congratulations. That's very good. Was that something?
I'll pass it on.
Okay, no, but what I'm wondering then is, like, was that something they were maybe hanging on to? Because even though they may not have agreed with like Castro and all that kind of stuff, but still Cuba was their home, right? So was it something they did not maybe want to give up, or how did that work with them?
I don't know about that specifically, being a Cuban citizen, the citizenship of like being a Cuban citizen, I don't think necessarily was the thing they were hanging on to, but the idea of, your country, your land, right? Your the place where you grew up and where you come from, that certainly. And then there's family, My mother still has family there, and so therefore I do as well. And just sort of, losing that passage of time is going to erode that, that familiarity, that life that you used to have. It is sort of, in many ways, like being born again. And for me, it was a little easier. I had only been alive, so to speak, for 10 years or so. For, my mother and father who were in their 30s, it's like being born again. It's sort of like going, okay, I'm going to just hit the reset button and start again in a strange land.
And speaking of sort of born again, have you been back to your birthplace?
I have not been back. No, my sister's been back.
Do you have any desire to?
I don't. No. No, I don't think I would want to. I think my sister, my sister went because she was older. She had more friends who were sort of age, right? And so she went back both to see family, but also because she remembered or was in contact with more friends who were still there. I was, 9 years old. By now, friends I did have, I don't really know. You know what I mean? And I would not want to go back and give the government money, is also a big part of it, to just sort of keep doing what they're doing.
Right. No, I can fully understand that. So I get that. So another thing you brought up about how going to theater school and studying that helped you, you sort of alluded to, speak English better. Now, again, like I said, since I was living down there, I knew a lot of people who still have like a very thick accent and stuff. Yeah. But you made the concerted effort, obviously, not to. So how hard was that?
Yeah, because, it was hard.
Because the reason I'm asking, Z, right? Because everybody says it, and I'm not going to say everybody. I know I do. I won't speak for people. But you look at something. I had a lot of friends down there. I'm like thinking to myself, you've been here 30 years. How come you still have how come you don't know English? How come you still have such a heavy accent? Because you have to make a dedicated effort to do it, right?
You do. You definitely do. Yeah. And I did, and I wanted to, because I knew those people also, and it always bothered me that the way they spoke and the way they came across and the way they sort of said, I'm going to walk into this place and they don't know English. I mean, they don't know, they don't know Spanish when I walk in there. Oh man, they got to learn Spanish. And I'm like, what are you talking about? Right. I mean, it always bothered me, and I wanted to make the effort to not to do things properly, I guess is not because I wanted to erase being Cuban or get rid of my ability to speak Spanish or anything like that. I just wanted to, when speaking English, I wanted to do that properly. When speaking Spanish, I wanted to do that properly. And to this day, I have a harder time speaking Spanglish, as we call it, meaning in the same conversation, sort of flopping back and forth between English and Spanish. I still have a harder time doing that to this day than just picking one and having a conversation in that language. So because I was a stickler for it.
Right. So when you go home and you're with your parents in their house, you're 100% Spanish. Boom, that's it.
Yeah.
And where you are now in your house, you're 100% English, but you just have problem that's kind of funny.
Yeah, if I was going to jump back and forth in the same conversation, that would bother me. Yeah, so I'm speaking one thing or the other, unless I'm cursing, of course. Then I'm cursing.
Okay, so now you went to college to study the arts, theater. So obviously you were an artsy person. So before you decided to go to college to study theater, what was artsy Z? What was it about you that wanted that or the desire to act or to study theater? But even though you did say you liked the teaching more, were you ever sort of the one in front of the in the screen, the TV or on the stage, or no?
Oh, sure. Yeah. That was mainly what I did. I did a little bit of the technical side of theater is because I mean, the fine arts degree involved that. So I did that, but I was mainly out front. I did a lot of stage work. I would say it began in high school. And I remember when I went from middle school to high school, they picked my electives. I don't know if that's a thing they always did or what it was. But anyway, I got 2 random electives. And I forgot what the other one was, shop or something, which was great. And theater. So I just sort of got the class and I tried my hand at it. And I found out that I really enjoyed it. And I guess I was pretty good at it because the teacher wanted me to stick around with it and signed away for me to be put into and be part of the magnet program, the sort of advanced track in high school for that. And so I stuck with it through high school, did well with that, and then decided to continue pursuing that in college. That's
and then
pretty much where that came from. I mean, as far as being artsy outside of that, sure. I mean, I liked messing around with writing, poetry, that sort of thing, or just generally writing. I don't play any instruments. I like music. I like the idea of, I think I would consider myself in some ways musical, but I don't play an instrument.
right. Okay.
I can carry a tune. Okay. That sort of thing. I'm a very visual person though. So I do like visual arts.
Okay, and so when you graduated then, and of course you're thinking, okay, I've got a fine arts degree. I don't know if you did a lot of plays or acting in college, but did you ever try or to pursue becoming a professional actor?
I did a little bit of it. I did a lot of stuff in college, and then I did a few things outside of it. I did a few plays. Up in Broadway Performing Arts Center. I did a few plays there, and I did a play down in the Keys, and I did a few things. Yeah, while I was in college, last couple of years or so, I had a part-time gig at a sort of after-school program, and they taught a variety of things. There was a dance teacher there, and they had a few different things, and so I worked there. I got a job there teaching theater to the little ones. So I was sort of getting my feet wet with the whole teaching thing. And then after that, like I said, I did the acting for a little bit, did some technical work where I was, joined the union call list and would go to a light hang or, some sort of strike of a set somewhere, stuff like that. And so I did that stuff backstage, right? And did a little bit of acting, but pretty quickly moved on to teaching. And I knew I wanted to teach high school level just because I knew I could communicate with that age a little bit better.
Right. Of course, right? Because so now I want to talk a little bit about the gaming, because obviously you're a teacher. You're also a trained actor, we could say.
I hope so. I got a degree somewhere. Yeah.
You do. You have a degree somewhere. So when you sort of signed on to the Dice Tower, Tom asked you to come on and do this. I'd like to know, like, in the initial stages, at what point did you think, with all of your skills as an actor, as a teacher, and all this kind of stuff, and doing what you were doing, did you feel, and you may not still to this day, I don't know, but that you were good at what you do? You know what I mean? And again, don't be humble or anything, because you are good. But like, at what point did you feel you had got this, right? Because again, I imagine as becoming as a acting teacher, you had to go through a growth, and you were probably like, oh no, I'm really good at this. There was that point. So at what point did you feel you were good at your job of reviewing games?
I think when people remind me is when I'm like, oh, I guess I'm doing okay. Honestly, I really am like that. I think theater training, learning how to act, being on stage, is a hard thing to know you are growing in. To this day, I think that. It is hard. It is not math. Right, it is not. Time me. I'm going to solve this problem. Oh, it took me 30 seconds. I used to do it in 2 minutes. I am that much better. It's a hard thing, and in fact, most of the time, if you are someone who is studying theater, you want to get sort of a read on how much you've grown, go watch bad theater. And then you'll be like, okay, I'm seeing what, like, okay, I know that, I know now that that's terrible. That person turned the wrong way. They need to open up, and they don't know how to find their light. Blah, 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 right? So I feel the same way about this job in many ways. You know, I think I'm doing it well. I mean, I do my reviews and my top 10s. I try to be myself, and I am myself. If anybody, you know, I had one time somebody came up to me and said hi. I said hi, cracked the joke, and they were like, "Oh, you're like you are in the videos." I'm like, "It is me. What do you mean?" You know? So that's basically it. And so when someone says, "Hey, you're doing a good job," or "Hey, Z, you did a great, you put that review together very well," or "You really made your points," I'm like, "Okay, I guess I'm doing that well." You know? That's
right, but as that growth you're talking about, and there's like a hard way to like judge it or know it, there did come a point in your growth in the reviews where all of a sudden you started doing your target thing, right? So why, or what was that growth? Like, why did you all of a sudden feel that you needed to add this? Was it from your teaching, or what was it that growth came about?
I'll tell you exactly why that one came about. And everything's like this. Every little thing I do or change is a necessary something that I feel is missing, right? And so it's a reaction to something else. I put it in there, and I came up with the, you know, the cutesy, like it spells target, and that's for the target audience, and each letter means something. I came up with all that really just because I found myself wrapping up too many reviews. And once I was done recording, most of them, you know, it was a one take or two, I'd be done and then realize, oh, I forgot I wanted to talk about how bad the paper money was in this game or whatever. And I forgot to mention it. I need to break this stuff down for myself, take better notes, whatever, so that I don't miss that stuff I want to talk about. And that's where the target audience thing comes from, you know. I want to make sure that I'm hitting all these moments so that if there is something glaringly bad or really awesome, I'm hitting it in this breakdown. It should catch everything.
Right. Okay. So, right. Because, okay. So now you had talked about like when to see your growth as an actor, watch bad theater. And the same thing with you when you're like, man, okay, I missed that. I missed that. So I need to make this target thing to make sure I remind myself of that.
Right.
So at this point now that you have that target thing in place, do you feel that, because you may go back and look at you in the past and like you're saying, oh, I forgot that. Do you feel that now your reviews are proper or 100%? Do you know what I mean? Like, since you've added that, do you feel that they're correct?
I feel they're better.
Okay.
They're not 100%. You know what I mean? It's not, you're never done. That's
True.
how I felt about this. That's how I felt about theater, you know, as I always said. And I did a lot of, or a good amount, I should say, not a lot. I did more acting than I did directing, but I did a decent amount of directing. And as a director and as an actor, you know, there's always that idea of the only reason I'm done working on something is because the play opens. And even then, some people like to find that wiggle room. I'm not the kind of director who likes to mess with it after it opens. Let the rest of it happen organically. But that's the only reason you stop making it better, is because it's opening night. So you're done. You ran out of time. That's how I feel about this, you know? Is it at 100%? No. I think my reviews are a little too long right now. I think I need to tighten up the center of them so that I don't over-explain how the game. I'm working on that to try to make the explanation of what's on the table, that segment of my review, try to make that a little bit tighter so that everybody gets 95% of my meaning while I cut down to the 80% of the time, right? That's what I'm looking for right now. So no, I'm always working on it. I'm always thinking of how to make it better.
Right. So in the interpretation of, like, say, a character, right? When you're an actor, a lot of that comes down to the individual's interpretation, how they feel that part should be portrayed or whatever.
Sure.
And the same thing about your reviews. So what is it inherently, maybe if it has to be all 6 of those things, but that you think, I mean, is it built for you, what you think should be explained or reviewed, or is it built for the audience? Do you know what I mean? Like, is it something you would want to watch a reviewer to do, or do you do it for other people?
That's interesting. I think I do it for other people, because because I always tell the audience, anybody who sort of gets hung up on anything, I tell them, don't worry about what I said, worry about that overview, watch the game on the table and decide if it's something that looks good to you. That's why I do that part. I do my review at the end, and I give people the sort of thumbs up or thumbs down and a final rating, which I include now. I used not to include it, but now I actually give it a number. I do that in many ways because it's sort of expected, and people would go, well, what did you think of it if I didn't do it? But I think it's less important than just sort of getting eyes on the game. It's, I want the review to be another document in a series of documents people look at when they're deciding if a game looks like something they might want to play or purchase or gift to someone, right? That's how I feel about it, ultimately.
But then you said it's sort of become the norm, and that's sort of a question I have about, say, the review process now. So, like, for example, like when I was growing up and you watch like Siskel and Ebert, right?
Yeah.
When they talk about the movie, they talk about sort of their feeling, their thoughts, and all that kind of stuff. But with board game reviews, there seems to be where there's an explanation and then the review. Why has that become the norm, or do you feel that is more necessary? Because a lot of times, just to be honest, whether it's you, Tom, or a lot of reviewers, I just skip the explanation. I want to hear how you feel about it, how you think about it. So why has that become the norm?
I think it appeals to two different kind of consumers of board games. The people who want to see the game, how it plays. They want to hear about the mechanisms of the game. They want to understand its workings, its inner workings, right? And then people who want to know what I thought of it, and if I can sort of translate that mechanical babble to feelings. This made me feel like I was running out of time. This made me feel like I had very little control over the outcome, that sort of thing, I think a little bit of both is very important. And again, even if I did not do the second part, the reason I say it's the norm is not because we have to do it that way. I just know people would ask. And so I might as well just put it in there now and not have to answer the questions individually. That's why I put it in there. But at the end of the day, if I rate something a 9, I do think that's less important than just watching the video and going, it looks like garbage. I'm not interested. Great. Then don't play it. Just because I liked it does not mean you will. That's the thing. But people will want to know what I thought. Why? I don't know, but they will.
No, of course, because again, just like an actor, because we're talking about those two parallel worlds, because that's what you are as well, is people are going to watch somebody because they like that actor. So regardless of what genre the film is or whatever it is, they're going to watch it, go to the movie theater, pay their money for it because it has that actor. The same thing with you. If people find out, hey, you know what? I like the games that Zee gives 8, 9s, 10s to, so I'm just going to do it because I know he likes it and I like the same kind of things.
Sure. I mean, that logic technically eventually fails, but I get what you're saying. It's like I've had people come up to me at conventions and say things along the lines of, I always like the games you like. I'm like, well, so far. Eventually I will like a game you will dislike. That's just how statistics work, but I get it. Yes.
Yeah. That is true. That eventually you'll be wrong, right? So out of your 6 things, out of the target, right? And real briefly, if you don't mind, can you just go ahead and name those 6 things for the audience, please?
Yeah, so it's a theme or thematic ties at the top. That's the T. Aesthetics, the look, the sort of quality of the components, the just to build quality, right? That's the next one. So it's TAR. Replay value would be after that. How much do you think you can keep coming back to this game on the table? So it's sort of like over time that each occurrence of it. How's that going to go? And then the next one, which is game arc, is focusing in on one occurrence of the game. How does that go? Where are the ebbs and flows? Where are the high points and the low points? Does it feel satisfactory? Does it run out? Is there a denouement? Does it not really hit a climax? All that stuff. That's the game arc. And then at the bottom, the bottom two is ease of play. How quickly can you get to playing? How easy is the game to play? And lastly, I throw into the same bucket tactics, luck, and strategy. Because I think, depending on the game, those three are differently important, you know?
Right. Okay. So out of the 6 things you have for your target, if you can, I'd like you to maybe tell me what you think personally, not caring, and I don't mean not caring what your audience thinks, not for the audience, but you personally, what you think is the most important. If you can give me maybe a 1, 2, 3 out of your 6 things from target.
It's tricky, and it does vary depending on the game. It really does. It's not if I could say, oh, well, the theme is really important. Well, not if it's an abstract game. It's not. Who cares, right? There is no theme. But I would say the game arc, which was definitely the one that took me the longest to settle on, and it's the one that's sort of gone through the most iterations, I'll say. The game arc is near the top. What does it feel like to play the game? What is a session? What is the cadence of playing this game? How does that play out?
Right, because like you're saying, regardless of the type of game, whether it's an abstract game or whatever, that is going to be the same with any type of game, right?
Right. That's the. I think it's got to be the top of the list because it's where you get game tension and interest and a sort of turn angst of waiting for your turn to come around and hoping someone doesn't take something you're hoping to do. It also works whether you're playing a cooperative game or a competitive game or a push your luck game. The game arc should have a very nice sort of much like a movie plot or a play, right? It has that nice curvature of rising tension and so on. There's no inciting incident. I guess that's like putting the board on the table. But you know what I mean? It's that sort of like rising tension, nice resolution. You have a little conversation after the game's over where you go, oh, I really thought you had me there and I was able to pull out a win at the end. That sort of thing. That's the game arc. That's important. If the game's lucky, it's fine. If the game's really thinky, that's fine. What's it play like? I think some of the combinations are bad, like a game that's really long and really lucky. That's a bad thing, and that game arc will suffer for it. So it sort of reflects the others. And many of these things sort of reflect the others, Right. One feeds into a different one. That's how that goes.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, top game arc, tactic, strategy, luck, and then ease of play gets dinged a lot for bad rule books.
I know. I just watched, what was it? I just saw you the other day. You were saying it was the one you talked about English and Spanish, and how there's different things, and you were just like the rule book is horrible. Like this game is easy, and it should be. What game was that?
It's Castles of Tuscany.
That's right. Because I love Castles of Burgundy. That's right. I had to watch Castles of Tuscany, and I remember you said that specifically. The game, the ease is easy, but the rule books like make it hard.
Right. The rule book is a problem. You're not sure, if you're playing by the right rules at any given moment. I read the Spanish and the English rule book. They have differing rules, and so I looked up online, and apparently, so do the German rules have a couple of instances of clarifying something a different way. So among all the rule books, there's sort of like a master set, but very few people are going to be able to read them all. So that was problematic. Again, it doesn't break the experience, but it is a problem when I can't nail down whether this is supposed to be 2 points or 2 points every turn or what's the deal. Yeah.
Right. Okay, so you got game arc for number 1, which you think is probably most, and I would agree too, because that can pretty much apply to any game, whether it's abstract, heavy strategy, whatever. Ease of play, and what would be your number 3?
Let me see. It's probably, replay value's got to be near the top, unless it's a legacy game or something like that, where it's meant to be finite. You want to keep coming back to it. You want that variability to be high, right? You want the experience to allow for surprises every time you sit at the table to play this game. Those can be subtle. They don't have to necessarily be, oh my goodness, in this game, we're now fighting zombies. And last game, it was cooperating on a farm. Like, it doesn't have to be that wild. But the ability of a game to surprise you, to make you go, huh, I guess now I have to adjust what I was doing to try for this if I want to win. That is, and the opposite of that, the inverse of that being, of course, you sit down and you go, okay, I'm just churning a machine. And this plays on rails, right? It's the same it was last time.
Right.
It's sort of like watching yourself play. You could have recorded yourself last time and just play that back, and it's the same experience. That would be bad replay value, right? So I think that's important. Now, at the bottom of the scale is likely to be the ones that are based much more on just personal taste. You have theme, and thematic implications and things like that.
Right,
the aesthetics,
right, because there's people like me who are the dry Euro type where I don't care what the theme is. You know what I mean? I just like the puzzle. Sure. So sometimes I'll play a game, not even know what the theme is, but it's still a great, good game. Yeah.
So now into it does go a little bit more than just like whether I like or not the theme. Into it goes, for example, the idea of, can I use the theme to help the teach? And I think that is important, even for Euro games, right? So the idea of, like, in this game, you are collecting wood. That wood is going to be converted into wooden carts. That makes sense. That's how you build wooden carts, out of wood.
Right.
But if the idea is you're collecting stone, and that stone, then you feed it to your family, at the end of the round, you go, wait, that's an extra mental leap that your players have to make.
Exactly.
So that ties into the theme.
Right. So we got just a little bit of time left, Z, and I want to ask you a question here. Now you can be honest if you like it or not, but I'm sure you will be. But
I hope I am. Yeah.
Yeah. No, but
I'm excited. I'm hoping I am honest. We'll see.
And you'll understand why when I ask you this question. It's just an innocuous question, kind of. But since you do this for a living, right? Essentially play games for a living. However, I know it's a lot of work, like you were just talking about, you were rendering video before we started this, and there's a lot of work to it. I get it. But unlike, say, a actor, right? When you're on stage, on Broadway, you do that, but you go home and you got your life. You're never going to act at home. A doctor, you go, you love your job, but you play games for pleasure. And I get the whole thing that it's about the people, it's about the experience. Okay, I get all that. Let's kind of forget that, all right?
Yeah.
Is it tough ever? And again, whether you want to, I'll be as honest as you can, to like enjoy games or to get away from it because like your job is gaming. So is that ever tough for you?
Sure. Yeah. It's again, people often think, oh, you play games for a living, that's fun. And to a certain degree, that is true. Yes, I also do, like you said, all the rendering and cutting and recording, all that stuff. But also just looking at the playing part, I can play if most just about anybody else starts playing a game and that game is terrible, they can stop playing that game and move on. I have to keep playing it, and then I got to read the book and then write the book report. That was always the worst part of the book, was writing the book report, right? Afterwards, even if you enjoyed the book, it's like, oh, now I got to dissect it. So yes, that comes with the territory, and many times you doing this does find one sort of going, okay, I'm done. Let's just pull an old favorite from the shelf and let me just cleanse the palate. Because yes, you do find yourself sort of going through games and they lose a little bit of that, I don't want to say personality, but maybe that's the right word. They start becoming sort of product, and it loses a little bit of its soul when you do that. When you're just sort of looking at something as a product, you take it, you examine it, and you examine that thing and you consume it, play it, talk about it, forget about it. So absolutely, it is hard, and you do lose a little something. I think anything you do as a job, you lose something. Have I found myself completely entranced playing a game knowing I'll review it and I can forget that part? Absolutely. Happens all the time. Much like I could be on stage performing a part and lose myself in it. But I still know in the back of my head I'm going to get paid at the end of the week. You know what I mean?
Right, true. But Z, the kind of core point I'm trying to make is like, is it still pleasurable for you to play a game on your own time? Because that is your work.
Right. It is. Yes. As long as it's a pleasurable game. It is. Absolutely. Like anything, right? But the difference, the only difference really at the end of the day is that I have to play bad games also. And I have to. I don't I don't get to skip them. That's what I'm saying.
Right. That is true, because Tom says that all the time. He goes, I probably play more games than anybody else. And he goes, well, you know what? I should take that back, because there probably are people allowed to play a whole lot of games. He goes, but I can guarantee I play more bad games than anybody else.
Yeah. And I'm sure he's right. You know,
Yes.
It comes with the territory. Like anything, you dive into anything, you know, the good stuff rises to the top. And if you are someone who just is a consumer of that, you are digging usually from the top. Dive in enough, and there's plenty of bad music, bad movies, bad games.
Absolutely.
That's just how that works.
Absolutely. Well, Z, it's been absolutely fantastic spending this time with you. Thank you so much. I learned an awful lot, and I hope the audience did too. So before I go real quick, if you could just tell the audience where they can get more of Z, like if you have certain times you're on the Dice Tower, if you're going to be going, well, probably not with COVID, actually going to any conventions or anything, but just let everybody know where they can get their fill of Z.
Well, the best way to sort of just check up on what I'm doing, what's happening in my little world is on Twitter. Just go to Twitter at @ZEE_Garcia, and I'm on there. From there, you can check out my Instagram too, but I'm on there a little less. That's where you want to be. Don't mess with Facebook. That's personal. You want to know about Dice Tower Z and just sort of like, you know, public stuff. Twitter's where you want to be. And then, of course, on the channel itself, I'll be coming out with reviews every week. We'll do Board Game Breakfast Thursday mornings. We've got those. They go out live, so we can chat with you in the comments. And then we have a top 10 list every other week. There's tons of content. I couldn't even list it all. So that's where you can get some more of me.
There you go. Well, again, Z, thank you so much for joining us. I really appreciate it. And I'll talk to you soon.
All right. Thank you.
Well, there you go, everybody. And thank you so much for joining us again for another episode of Meepleville Meets. I just think it's absolutely fascinating because, again, I lived in South Florida, as I mentioned, for about 15 years, and I knew quite a bit of people, quite a few Cubans. But, you know, to hear the story and to hear the background of somebody who we all, know, like, because watching the videos, watching reviews and all that kind of stuff, but a lot of times you don't know their life. So I just found it actually fascinating. And I'm so glad that I was able to bring that experience to you and I was able to learn myself. And again, I want to thank Z for sharing that experience for us. So anyway, thanks again for watching another episode of Meepleville Meets, and we'll talk to you guys soon.